At first glance, Doug Jones, the Democratic nominee for Senate in Alabama, appears to be running a lonely race against Roy S. Moore, the arch-conservative former judge whose candidacy is being swallowed by accusations that he sexually assaulted teenage girls. National Democratic groups have not spent $1 on their own television or radio commercials promoting Mr. Jones, a former federal prosecutor. The party's most popular campaigners, such as former President Barack Obama and Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, have not set foot in the state. As Republicans in Washington pressure Mr. Moore to leave the race, with the Republican National Committee pulling its financing, on Tuesday, Democratic leaders convey a stark public message to Mr. Jones: "You're on your own." It's an Alabama race, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader, said at a news conference on Monday, repeating the phrase 3 times for emphasis. But the National Democrats' ostensibly arm's-length treatment of Mr. Jones belies a far deeper investment in the race. Senate Democrats covet Alabama's Senate seat, passionately, but, as Mr. Schumer demonstrated, they are acutely aware of the risk of being seen as orchestrating the race from afar. As Mr. Jones has gained ground against Mr. Moore, Democrats have taken measured steps to shore up his candidacy, helping Mr. Jones raise money and battering Republicans who have been slow to denounce their party's embattled nominee. Several liberal activist groups have begun deploying organizers to Alabama to help prepare get-out-the-vote efforts for Mr. Jones in the December 12 election. And far from being shunned by the party, Mr. Jones's top advisors have been open about which direction the shunning is going. "Stay home, this is our race and we'll decide it here," said Giles Perkins, a former Alabama Democratic Party chairman and one of Mr. Jones's strategists. Mr. Jones, 63, has leaned heavily on his biography and legal record in the race, highlighting above all his role in prosecuting 2 of the Ku Klux Klan members who bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham in 1963. With an easy personal manner that contrasts sharply with Mr. Moore's fire and brimstone style, Mr. Jones appealed to national Democrats early on as the kind of candidate who could win over unsettled voters to the right of center. Mr. Jones also has a political network of his own to draw on in the race, and the few outsiders to stump for him have been personal acquaintances. Representative John Lewis of Georgia, a civil rights legend who got to know Mr. Jones as a United States attorney, campaigned for him this month. Former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr. rallied Democrats in Birmingham for Mr. Jones in October. Mr. Jones led Mr. Biden's 1988 presidential campaign in Alabama. Former Representative Parker Griffith, a conservative Democrat, said he spoke to Mr. Jones over the last few days and found him quiet and circumspect about the impact of the Moore scandal. He said, "Well, let's see how this plays out." Mr.